Welcome, everyone. We'll get started shortly, but I'd like to give people a few more moments to get their audio preferences settled before beginning. All right. Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Before I hand it off to our presenters, I just want to cover a few technical details in case you haven't joined Acro webinar in the past. We use Zoom webinar, which is similar to Zoom meeting, except that your cameras and your microphones are disabled by default. So to interact with each other or with the presenters, you have two main options. For discussion and general comments, go ahead and use the chat button. This defaults to hosts and panelists, however, so that means only they can see your message. If you want everyone to see it, make sure to select everyone from the drop-down menu. And you can ask questions at any time by clicking on the Q&A button. So please utilize that for questions for the presenters. You can ask questions anonymously and you can ask them at any time. You can comment on existing questions. And without any further ado, I am handing this off to Beth.
Thanks so much, Belma. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on how registrars support student retention. As you can probably tell, those of you who are at the annual meeting, this deck probably looks familiar, the formatting that is. We presented this at the annual meeting in Colorado a few months back. So me and Victor and Danielle are really happy and grateful to Acro for letting us do a repeat performance for all of you. Jumping into our agenda, we will start with a few introductions, not just of ourselves, but of our individual institutions, a brief overview to provide some context for the next portion of the agenda, which is when we'll each take about 10 minutes to walk through what we're doing at our individual institutions. We hope to save about 10 minutes at the end for questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat, like Belma said. And if we don't have time to get through them all, we will try to follow up with folks with answers after the presentation. So I'm going to kick off the introduction period. My name is Beth Kinley-Gronzo. I'm the University Registrar and Associate Vice President of Student Information Systems at New York University. I've been at NYU since 2013, and you'll see we provided a little bit of details about our institutions. NYU is a large, very large private research institution. We have about 18 schools. Most of them are located in New York City, but we do have 2 degree granting schools, one in Abu Dhabi and one in Shanghai. And we also have a dozen or so academic centers around the globe. Provide a little bit of enrollment information. I'm not going to read through it all, but I will highlight that we support anywhere from 25 to 30,000 undergraduate students, which is the primary audience in the retention conversations. Also providing a little bit of retention information for you all. Super excited to announce that we've hit our highest retention rate ever with our fall 21 cohort, coming in at 94.7%. I call that 95 myself, but you know, some people want to be really precise. Our 4-year graduation rate has spanned over the last few years from 75 to 79%, 6-year 85 to 89%. I will say, like all institutions, NYU was hit by the pandemic and we saw these numbers drop significantly. So in, I'd say, our fall 19 cohort, that retention rate dropped down to about 90%. And our 4-year graduation rate for the fall 18 admits, let's say, was around 70%. But we're still seeing those numbers move up since then. We're also sharing organizational charts, high-level organizational charts, because we think how you as a registrar enter the student success conversation or can impact student success efforts at your university really does come in. It's really impacted by where you sit in the organization itself. So at NYU, I'm part of the Enrollment Management Division, which has recently been renamed Global Enrollment Management and Student Success, highlighting what a key initiative this is for us in our division and at NYU. We are part of the Provost's reporting line, along with student affairs and academic affairs, but they are separate reporting lines and have very separate areas of focus. We overlap, obviously, but again, I think it's important to note that they are separate at NYU. You'll notice I've not only highlighted the Registrar's Office, which is the team I oversee, but also student success. There is a separate department at NYU called Student Success. They were born around 2018. The fact that they exist at all really highlights the importance of this strategic initiative at NYU. It wasn't just born in light of just retention and graduation. We are talking a lot about affordability at NYU with our high price tag and for tuition, and as well as access programs to increase access to higher ed across the board. With that, I will pass it to Danielle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Danielle Fawcett, and I am the Associate Registrar over Curriculum and Scheduling here at the University of Missouri St. Louis. We are a much smaller institution than NYU. We're a small public research university that is also a land grant institution. We have about 85 scheduling units and 99 degree programs. And we have about 15,000 enrolled in any given fall semester. So a lot smaller than NYU, but still holding strong. Like Beth said, we were impacted by the pandemic, but hopefully we'll get those numbers back up soon. We do have an acceptance rate of 58%, but I do want to highlight that we have 108,000 alumni in the St. Louis region, and over 80% of those alumni stay in the St. Louis region, living and working, which is big. It's monumental, I think. And if our chancellor is here, she would tell you we are St. Louis. Our retention rate is about 75% for our 2021 admits, and our graduation rate is 52% for our fall 2016 cohort. Our enrollment organizational chart looks a little bit different than NYU and MU's because our registrar's office reports directly to the vice chancellor for strategic enrollment, who then also reports directly to the chancellor. So we're not under student affairs, we're not really under academic affairs, we're kind of our own little world here, and we work directly with admissions, student financial services, new student programs, enrollment marketing, and athletics. However, I would like to note that like most universities, student success is everyone's responsibility. And here at UMSL, it is technically managed by the Office of the Associate Provost for Student Success, which is housed in academic affairs. And I'll turn it over to Victor.
Hello, everyone. I'm Victor Price. I'm the Associate Registrar at the University of Missouri in Columbia. The University of Missouri Columbia is a large public research university, and we are also a land grant university with over 300 degree programs. Our current enrollment is a little over 31,000, and we have an acceptance rate of about 82%. We're doing really well on retention. We've been growing and improving that for some time, and we're up to 88.4%. And we're pleased with that, and of course, going for higher. And our current graduation rate in 4 years is 56, and our 6-year graduation is 72%. So we are fully engaged in all the retention activities for our area. And we also report, much like NYU, to a vice provost for enrollment management, and that is a direct line to the provost. So we are considered the academic side of the house, although we do work with student affairs, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. We do most of our work with the faculty and the faculty side of the house.
Thanks, Victor. I'm going to jump in and kick off the second portion of our agenda today, where we talk a little bit about how the Office of the Registrar impacts or plays a role in student success at our individual institution. I'm not going to talk solely about retention. I think our impact is a little bit broader than that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a lot of different things. In preparing for this presentation, Victor and Danielle and I found we're doing a lot of similar work, but the details of that work is different. And that's different based on our institutional size, our institutional culture, whether we're public or private, et cetera. So Danielle and Victor are going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the topics that I'm kind of going to gloss over. But if anyone in the audience wants more details on what we've done at NYU, please feel free to reach out to me after this. I'm happy to provide lessons learned, documentation, communications, whatever you might find helpful to your work at your institution. I want to touch back on what I said about the enrollment management landscape at NYU. As I mentioned, Student Success was born around 2018. We recently changed our divisional name. It's important to note that the registrar joined enrollment management about 2013, shortly before I arrived at the university. So there's been a lot of work done across the institution on our data program. You might have noticed on the org chart that institutional research is also part of enrollment management, which is somewhat unique at NYU. And there's been a ton of transition in how we support data governance, data ownership, maintenance, access, et cetera. So as this landscape of our organization has changed, so has my role, so is my perspective on student success work as a whole. I'll try to touch on that as I walk through my slides. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about my role in fostering collaboration, in connecting dots, not just connecting people, but also processes that we see across the university, data systems, that sort of thing, to help my partners in student success, institution research, and others navigate the politics of work like this, which can be somewhat dense sometimes at a decentralized university like mine, especially. So the work I've done and my team has done falls into three categories mainly: data, improving process for the sake of the student experience, and strategic planning. So let's start with the data. You know, registrars, most of us, I think, if not all, are stewards of the academic record. So we are uniquely positioned really to educate the community about the data and the importance of the critical data assets. We also are uniquely positioned to have a really broad impact with small changes or even sometimes big ones. And when we started this work, we really had to focus on the basics. I was pretty struck by how few people really understood what retention was and how it was calculated. So really focusing on definitions of the critical data assets and the practices they drive, cleaning up the data. You know, I came from small school registrar offices where, you know, term start and census, you had a whole series of things that you could kind of be on top of for cleaning up the data. At a university of this size, that can get really messy really fast. And there's a lot more hands in that data. So we put a ton of effort there working with institutional research and others to make sure that was really, you know, a fine-tuned machine, which I'm happy to say we're at now. Also, as I mentioned, a lot of people are touching this data. So getting those broad practices in a consistent way. When we started this work, how people defined or even maintain the data around leave of absence, withdrawals, all that was pretty inconsistent. So we spent years talking about what a leave of absence means, how it should be entered, building a custom workflow in our student information system so the student could initiate, and we could really educate the student through the process while maintaining the academic policy. That required a lot of alignment. It took a long time. And last but not least, of course, is the data itself. Process, systems, et cetera. In my office, I have a team called Enrollment Management Technology, and I come at all this work with sort of the registrar instinct of gatekeeping the data, and that has really shifted over time. Making sure the right people are in the room for conversations about these initiatives matters. We don't have to show up and lead everything. We don't need to do everything, but having the subject matter expert in the room to say, well, that's not the right data point, or, well, those systems don't talk to each other yet. That sort of stuff is really important to this work because student success, it's about the holistic picture. And I bet a lot of us are dealing with really segregated systems. And it's the technical folks who can come in and kind of pull it together and find the overlap. And that really had to shift from us saying, we don't have to do everything, but we do have to be in the room to help and inform folks. And I think that's all my notes on this one. So moving on to improving process for the sake of the student experience. Oops. Sorry, folks. My scrolly made it move. Okay. As I say in like the yellow portion of this slide, all of our core business functions really are the nuts and bolts of student success work. Think about the way we manage registration. We found that about 25% of our students a few cycles ago, which translates to almost over 5,000 students at NYU, have holds that prevent them from registering on the first day. This prompted a pretty big conversation, and it was led by our academic affairs and our student success team, but we were invited to be in the room to listen to the concerns from the schools about how we traditionally manage advising holds, bursar holds, all these things that might be hurdles to student registration. putting my assistant registrars in those rooms and saying, you don't have to talk. You're just there to listen and to think about what they're talking about after the meeting, because we might be able to facilitate some of these changes more smoothly than they can without us being in the room and participating. Scheduling is another area. Danielle's going to talk a little bit more about this, where, really challenging folks to say, how are you distributing your courses across the day and across the week? This does impact who can take what and when, which in turn impacts how fast a student can graduate, right? So just those basic functions that we sort of are used to from a very process procedure mindset, starting to change the way we think about them and putting the student first in the conversation has been key, not just for educating others, but for really bringing my team to the table so they understand how the work we do can impact these high-level strategic goals. Graduation is obviously a big one. We did a really large project where we sort of streamlined the way we were taking in substitutions and waivers for degree requirements. And this led to a whole lot of conversations about the data, how we look at it, but it also really gave us an opportunity through the change management plan of that project to get face-to-face with the advising community and the folks in the departments who are submitting these things. And it allowed us to sort of create what we call user groups, where we have them come and we can really educate them on how the work they're doing is impacting the students' degree progress in our systems and in real life, and how, providing them spaces to come and talk to us and ask us, about the challenges they're having with the system lead to usually larger discoveries of larger problems sort of underneath the surface that we might not see if we didn't have that one-on-one time with them. Obviously, we're talking a lot about students applying for graduation, when they do it, why they don't do it on time. And we're partnering with student success quite a bit with the students who don't make it as planned. That student who's a few credits short. In the past, we just sort of say, apply for next semester and finish up and move on. But by partnering with student success folks, there's more elaborate and intrusive outreach to those students to make sure they finish cross the finish line, so they don't show up at our door 5-6 years later saying, oh, I didn't know I didn't graduate, or oh, I missed it by 3 credits and I just never finished because I got that job and moved on. Lastly, on this one, I'll talk about process and systems really briefly. I'm going to focus on the last bullet there, which is understanding how our students are interacting with our systems. Projects like allowing students to update their own chosen name, picking gender identity and pronouns, allowing them to enter the pronunciation of their name for their faculty. These things go a long way to a student's sense of belonging. And a lot of research shows that a lot of students leave their institutions because they don't feel like they belong or they don't feel welcome. So I cannot underemphasize the importance of that work. And I had to be pushed to do that work at one time. And now I find I'm the one pushing others. We also in our office support not only the student information system, PeopleSoft, but also the student success system, which we use Starfish at NYU. So we have functional analysts doing that sort of back-end configuration and management, along with the student success team who has specialists who do that focus. Okay, talking about strategic planning. This one's a little different to me. Obviously, we're all here to support our institution's strategic goals, but I'm here to recommend that you all really leverage those goals to prioritize your work. I know registrar functions and roles are different from institution to institution, but I have yet to meet a registrar who doesn't feel like they're the hub of their community, who doesn't feel like they're pulled in a million directions, I haven't met a registrar who's bored. We all have a ton of work to do. So this work allows us to point to the high-level priorities to justify where we're focusing our efforts. The smaller asks, if you can respond and say, we can't do that now because we're focusing on these areas with the broader impacts, it helps you communicate what you're working on and why. It also helps you say, but if you change the way you do it to align with the larger business practice, we might be able to help you. Again, I repeat, this was really around the work of leaves and withdrawals, understanding who's leaving and why, making sure all departments like Student Health Center and other were incorporated in those processes. These things have huge impacts on the student's life. We're focusing on Like I said, registration and scheduling, grading, and especially graduation, and progress to degree. These are things that hit every single student who comes in and graduates from our institution. So I say focus your energy on those places and focus on the places that you know have the biggest amount of pain points. The biggest project I leveraged these goals to justify was curriculum management. I imagine many of you get the same emails as I do from leaders and people across the community about wanting that new sleek tool for students to use. And I felt like I was a broken record saying, we need to get the foundational practices established before a system like that is going to work here. And folks were listening. So I was able to partner with the Provost's office and propose a very large project around overhauling curriculum management practices at NYU. We are implementing a bulletin, and we're going to implement a curriculum management system. And then third, we will implement a system to help students search the schedule and build a schedule that helps them meet their degree requirements. But that carrot at the end is very important because I was able to justify the need for the projects I felt we had to work on first in order to get to that. And last but not least, I'll say this work really motivated me to partner more. I think I went into a lot of rooms thinking I had to lead it, I had to own it, I had to do it all. And I knew a lot of this work is too much for a registrar's office like mine to take on. So learning to partner with students' success and advising departments across the university who can come to the table and do that outreach. As long as I give them the data, as long as we give them the processes that work, they can do the outreach that makes a huge difference to the one-on-one student. Or getting help from communications people. Registrars know a lot, and we sometimes share too much, and we sometimes forget about where the student is when we send a communication. So communications marketing folks have really helped us by running student focus groups for us, right? We just get the results. We don't have to do the big lift of coordinating it. They look at our communications and they look at our website and they give us feedback, and being receptive to that, I have found, is probably the most important part of our role in the registrar's office. How we phrase things and when we send things and how we send them really do impact whether or not the student responds or takes the actions we want them to. Okay, that is NYU. I will pass the baton over to Danielle.
All right, so the registrar's role in supporting student retention can take many forms, as Beth just outlined. For this section, however, I want to focus on the withdrawal survey we use here at UMSL, as well as how we collaborate with different departments on campus with the curriculum alignment process and early alert programs, and again, how the course schedule and academic network can drive student retention and success. So let's start with the withdrawal survey. When a student decides to withdraw, it can disrupt student success, and often students make this decision without fully understanding the potential consequences and without faculty or staff knowing that a problem exists. According to a national study done by Hobson's in 2017, first-year students at public universities who withdraw have a greater likelihood of stopping out during their academic career. This statistic was supported by data at UMSL, where reports show first-year students are significantly less likely to be retained if they drop even one course, and even less likely to be retained if they completely withdraw. So, excuse me. So in 2014, the registrar's office teamed up with Information Technology Services to kind of develop a withdrawal survey, which is in a homegrown application. And it also works with our student information system, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. This process was developed primarily because at the time, students here were allowed to drop all of their courses without anyone being notified and without that student receiving a touch point from the university. This seemed like an opportunity to improve that process. So now when the student drops their courses or wants to drop all their courses for a given term, they have to complete the withdrawal survey before they're allowed to do so. This then alerts specific offices on campus and is sent through a series of approvals, such as the student's advisor, Veterans Affairs, International, and Athletics prior to being processed. The registrar's office modified the student information system to prevent degree-seeking students from dropping below 1 credit hour, and if the student attempts to drop their last class, they receive an error message in the student information system that then gives them a link to the withdrawal survey, which again is housed in that external application. This process allows UMSL to not only capture the number of withdrawals each term, but also provides an opportunity for us to prevent those withdrawals, understand the reasoning for the withdrawals by analyzing the information and improving processes that may decrease future withdrawals from happening. Since 2014, the registrar's office, along with institutional research, has developed multiple reports that assist the academic units in determining common reasons for those withdrawals within their unit, as well as reports that assist units in reaching out to targeted population, such as students that noted that they would be returning. This then allows us to maintain continuous engagement with those students and encourage re-enrollment or find strategies or solutions that allow students requesting a withdrawal to remain enrolled. In summary, while it was easy to determine why a student might receive a low grade in class, for example, it's not always easy to understand why they're withdrawing from the university. Therefore, this withdrawal survey was developed to gain a better understanding of why students withdraw and determine if there were changes that we could make as a university to help reduce that number. So this is just an overview of our withdrawal process here at UMSL. First, the student completes the survey and submits it. And then it comes to our office for to obtain all approvals if required. So we reach out to advisors, athletics, veteran services, financial aid, even if the student is receiving financial aid. And other offices on campus are always notified when a student completes a withdrawal survey. So that's offices like cashier, student retention, and campus life. No matter what, the students are always, when they submit a withdrawal request, those offices are always notified. The registrar's office may also reach out in step 3 here to others depending on what was put on the withdrawal request. So if a student was to fill out the withdrawal survey and list that they had hardship reasons or mental health reasons, then we engage the care team to reach out to the student and provide that level of support that they might need. And maybe that might retain the student if they're given that support. However, once the registrar's office has reached out to all campus partners and done everything they can, and approvals are given and the student does still wish to withdraw, that process is completed and the withdrawal request is processed within 3 to 5 days after it is submitted. That allows time for our office to communicate with our campus partners, but also allows time for the students to then withdraw their request to withdraw. So we do have students that change their mind. Maybe the care team was able to help, maybe financial aid was able to get them a scholarship and they could stay enrolled. So this allows that processing time to allow for changes that might need to happen. I do want to point out that even though we wait the 3 to 5 days, we do backdate the withdrawal so that the students are not penalized because of our timeline. Next, I want to talk about the curriculum alignment process, known as CAP here at UMSL. It's driven by student success as part of an initiative to establish enrollment and streamline degree pathways. Leading this process, the Center for Teaching and Learning, known as the CTL, works closely with faculty, department chairs, and deans to align our curriculum with the needs of the students while establishing a clear path to graduation. This team assists departments by providing a framework and resources for each phase of the project, particularly in the areas of program outcomes, curriculum mapping, and assessment of student learning. They further assist departments by providing guidance on best practices for successful pathways to degree completion and by assisting departments with setting priorities. While academic departments regularly review their specific curriculum, this effort allows the university to globally look at a student's education path from start to finish and the challenges that faculty might face and asks them to critically reflect on how to streamline their course offerings, again, like Beth mentioned earlier, to provide that clear path to graduation without excess costs for the students. And CAP, each department considers the course the students need to meet their program outcomes and trims what does not contribute to that end. While some departments might not cut a single course or sections, others might find that they have several that do not effectively contribute to their defined outcomes. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably wondering, what does this have to do with the registrar's office? Well, as with any proposed curriculum changes, the curriculum and instruction committee of each college, as well as faculty senate, approve any changes to the courses or degree programs, while the registrar's office provides support and recommendations to those changes. We also provide support for any questions about requisites. That's a big one on this CAP process because our university is going through a post-enrollment requisite checking process right now and looking closely at the requisites that our students need to graduate. Each department then submits all those changes to their designated courses and programs for the committee to review, approve, and then those updates to the catalog are made by the registrar's office. That's then published in the UMSL bulletin. This is where the registrar's office collaborates with others to ensure that our students can reach their academic goals in a timely manner. And this is the overview of our curriculum alignment process. So phase 1 involves defining the program outcomes, so reviewing and updating outcomes for all degree programs and kind of differentiating between BA and BS degrees, as well as majors, minors, and certificate programs here at UMSL. Phase 2 is where we actually map the curriculum. So we consider new avenues for the students with their degree programs, review those course goals and assessments, align courses to program outcomes, streamline the curriculum, our archive, combine, and consolidate our courses, which is a big one, and review required courses. We also review electives and consider alternative elective groupings. And this is also where we review gen eds, as well as like cultural diversity qualifications. Phase 3 is where we determine sequencing, staffing, and scheduling. So again, this is big. We identify challenges and opportunities and degree pathway related to the student's success and completion, determine how often the courses should meet, plan that course staffing so that they can be scheduled in a timely manner, and plan for course delivery options. With the pandemic, we have seen a growth of online courses, as I'm sure many universities have. So this is where it becomes really important to make sure that we're reevaluating those courses and making sure those delivery options really match what we're trying to accomplish now, post-pandemic. Phase 4 is where we plan for assessment. So we reflect on the assessment plan for each degree program, update criteria and success for each outcome, plan for analyzing and reporting the results, and then identify examples of evidence of student learning. And next, I want to talk about early alert programs, which I know a lot of universities have and are aware of. But I wanted to kind of speak about what UMSL does with early alert programs, just to share kind of our knowledge. Our early alert program bridges the gap between classroom and student resources. And the goal of our early alerts is to initiate prompt communication and effective interaction with students who may be experiencing barriers to their academic success. In most cases, the early alert program is typically utilized for students in undergraduate study only here at UMSL. The Division of Student Academic Support Services, also known as SAS, has 3 offices that typically work with academic alerts. These are the Office of Multicultural Student Services, the Office of Student Enrichment and Achievement, and TRIO Student Support Services. Through this proactive program, early alerts aim to connect instructional faculty with a direct link to academic support services to refer students that encounter success barriers in their course. It also aims to provide students with the opportunity to increase their chance of success in a course by actively participating in effective strategies for improvement, such as academic support learners and supplemental instruction leaders that we have here at UMSL. We also support student learning by connecting students with necessary academic support services and encouraging a culture of support between students, faculty, and academic support units here at UMSL. And that's where the Registrars office comes into play. We actually work closely with the Center for Teaching and Learning and these other offices to make sure that they have the support that they need and can actively achieve that support. Lastly, I want to talk about the course schedule and the academic mapper. The course schedule is near and dear to my heart because I oversee course scheduling here at UMSL, and it can serve as the backbone to the university. It affects all other processes on campus because it provides the information on when and where the students are meeting. For example, the course schedule provides the information to determine food service operating hours, when events should take place, what the foot traffic is for campus police to know when our heaviest times are, and when facilities or ITS should complete their projects around the classes that are taking place. The course schedule can help reduce time to graduation, like Beth said earlier, and can have a high impact on student retention if it's built with a student-centric focus. Unfortunately, though, however, many course schedules are still rolled term to term and are built with faculty preference or institutional preference in mind. This is where the Registrar's Office can help support student retention by working with academic departments and campus partners and shift the focus to strategically build the schedule of classes around the needs of the students, and by making sure that we're strategically building the schedule of classes around the standard meeting patterns and making sure we're not having that bottleneck between 10 and 2. The academic mapper also works with the course schedule to provide the support for student retention. So since the academic mapper integrates with the student's own degree audit, including any upcoming transfer credit they may have, students are equipped with all information they need to map out their goals, as well as future semesters, utilizing both their personal scenario and transfer credit equivalencies, as well as the 4-year plans outlined in the catalog. Moreover, since the mapper integrates with the registration tool, which is College Scheduler here at UMSL, obstacles and barriers are reduced, and enrolling in classes each semester becomes less cumbersome and more student-friendly, which can potentially increase student persistence. Finding out early on what the requirements are and understanding the timeline needed to complete them can also reinforce persistence. Since some classes are offered only once a year or maybe once every other year, it's important for students to plan on when they can take these classes so they are not left scrambling and not left without an option. Furthermore, the academic mapper has multiple downstream effects, from informing departments on what classes will be needed for students to progress, as well as how many students will need a class, thereby allowing the university to create a more informed schedule of classes that can foster student persistence. So really, the academic mapper and the course schedule can increase student retention by making sure that we have the classes the students need to make sure that we're not elongating their time to graduation and making sure they're getting out in enough time and not providing excess cost to them. And I will turn it over to Victor.
Thank you, Danielle. Okay, so today we're going to discuss the registrar role at the University of Missouri with student success, and we're going to review our new leave of absence policy. We're going to talk about some examples of processes that were designed for retention in mind, some ideas about retention support from the University Registrar's Office, and we're going to talk about some implemented solutions that we've worked with our campus partners. Okay. At our institution, until this year, we didn't have a coordinated leave of absence policy for the campus. So we had academic divisions that had their own policies, some that didn't have any at all. So the faculty and the registrar and administration got together and decided that it was time for us to have a university-wide leave of absence policy. And the benefit of why we did this is here on the slide is, first of all, just to have a standardized policy that everyone was aware of and that everybody was being treated in the same fairness and same process. More importantly, especially for the undergraduate students, it's developed to route the student through our care team and student affairs. They're experts at assisting students who need resources. So we're dependent and reliant on them to kind of triage the situation when a student comes up and says, hey, I need to go on leave. We now have an electronic process of why the student is leaving, for how long, when they're going to come back, and also helps retain the students' access to their university email and other systems, so they can remain at least semi-active for the services on campus, even though they may be away. And the other point that we were trying to accomplish was to smooth the route to reentry. Previous to this policy, students who were on leave or not just had stepped out would have to go through a readmission policy through admissions. That no longer is a necessity. Since we have this policy, they can go directly back to enrollment. They can go directly back to requesting housing and get their housing request in. And they still have that pathway open to financial aid and other things, whereas before, when they didn't have an official leave policy, sometimes that didn't happen. Okay, a couple of policies that were designed for student retention. Both of them have been partnered with the University Registrar and been developed, in fact, with the registrar and have been in place a long time. They're both well-established policies. Academic renewal, we'll talk about first. Basically is our version of academic forgiveness. It is a policy where students who have been gone for a significant length of time, more than 4 years, who want to admit to the university and pursue a degree, can go back and look at those terms where they may have not done well and can have entire terms removed from their grade point average. We don't hide the grades, we don't hide that it happened, but we do notate that an adjustment has been made in their grade point average. So students who may come here as a young person and not made some good decisions and kind of got themselves in a hole, came back, they don't want to have to start with that grade point average, kind of holding them back. This gives them an opportunity to get a fresh start and gives them the opportunity to complete a degree with a GPA that would otherwise be considerably lower. That's an electronic process. We've had it in place for a long time. The petitions are evaluated by the registrar and is implemented and administered, the whole thing, by the registrar's office. The course repeat policy is similar, but specific to an individual course. So if a student has taken a course, an attempt at the university, it could be any of the 4 campuses of the University of Missouri system, and have scored below a C, they can repeat the course, take it again. They do have to pay for it. And after they get their second grade, they may turn in a request to us to do a grade point adjustment in their cumulative grade point average. So the first attempt no longer counts against their GPA. Course still remains on their transcript. Everyone can see it, but there is a notation again, and the GPA no longer is harmful to their overall GPA. It doesn't change their term GPA, doesn't change any academic actions they may have had during that term, but it does at least give them an opportunity to move forward with fewer detrimental grades against their grade point average. Okay. So our next slide, we're going to talk about some areas that the registrar's office supports that are part of the university-wide retention mechanism, let's say. The first thing we're going to talk about is the Committee for Revision of Records. It is a faculty-only committee. It's an anonymous committee that's appointed by the faculty council themselves. there is a petition process for students to be able to appeal, send a petition to the committee each month, and they can ask for their academic records to be modified. Usually, most of the requests are to have some kind of retroactive withdrawal of a course or even for an entire term. They have to have obviously extraordinary circumstances for that to be a significant, to be considered in any way. The registrar's office, our role in this is we're the ex officio of the committee. We're the only permanent member, as the rest of them are rotations, each on a 3-year term. So we're kind of the continuity of the faculty committee. We handle all the student contact. The committee members are anonymous. The students never know who they are. So all of the face-to-face meetings, the requests for more documentation, all the communications, everything is done through the registrar's office. And we're also the ones that present the decision. So if they don't get a decision they like, we get to have those discussions as well. So that's always fun. I have been in this role for a number of years. A number of other registrars in the office have done it as well. It's very rewarding work. And we're pleased that we can partner with the faculty on those. The next one we're going to talk about is the reassessment appeal. Reassessment is what our cashier calls the action of requesting a refund that's outside of our normal assessment schedule. So we have a refund committee, it's called the reassessment committee, and they talk about petitions that students that send in, again, with extraordinary circumstances that said, I know that I dropped this course this time in the semester and that would not get me a refund, but I was in a car accident and I was unable to finish the course. And unfortunately, it was early enough, I couldn't get an incomplete. So I've had to take a withdrawal, and I wish that I could have more of a refund or some refund that I may have not had before. So we have a committee. The registrar, again, handles all the aspects or the ex officio aspects of the petition. The evaluation of the petition, the communication, everything is through the registrar's office, and there's a decision made if the student can have a variance off of the assessment and can have credit issued back to against their university account. This is because we're dealing with money and sometimes large amounts of it, this is a direct retention tool or retention impact, as unfortunately finances often are. So that's always fun too, when you get to have that conversation when it doesn't go to an affirmative. Sometimes that's unpleasant, but that's okay. We have our very well-trained staff to take care of that. The final one we're going to talk about is residency. Well, the University of Missouri, because we're a state institution, we have differential tuition between Missouri residents and non-Missouri residents. And at our particular campus, the difference is significant. It's a large charge, a lot of money to be an out-of-state student. However, the university and the state of Missouri do have some guidelines where it is possible in certain circumstances to petition to be changed from a non-Missouri resident to a Missouri resident. So we have an online process for that. The registrar's office maintains that. We do all the communication, all the evaluation of the petitions, and guidance for prospective students and their families is all controlled and participate by members of the university registrar staff. We are the ex officio for the appeals when we evaluate the petitions. If there is the person's not approved, there's an appeal process, so we have a role in the appeal process as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in communications and things in some of my next slides. Implementing solutions with our campus partners. So these are some things that the registrar's office has partnered with other offices and administration on the campus to try to streamline things and keep them with an eye to retention, trying to make the experience for students better, streamlines things, move away from barriers that have been perceived by the students. One that I just spoke about being the reassessment schedule. Up until the last few years, our academic calendar, some of our academic dates when you could add and when you could drop, when you could withdraw, and the dates when you would have a full refund or a 50% refund or a 25% refund were not in sync. So it's frustrating for families. Say, I dropped this class early, but I only got this much refund. So we took a fresh look with the faculty, with the administration, and those groups were able to work together and come up with a coordinated schedule. So our academic calendar and our academic major dates now have corresponding dates on the reassessment calendar. So that was a big improvement and reduced a lot of reassessment appeals. It really also was beneficial for students and the administration. We had less confusion, less complaints, less appeals. So that was a big accomplishment. We have moved, as a registrar's office, we've moved to an online service management system called Sharewell, is the one particular product we're using. It allows us to have a completely digital form process. We no longer now have paper forms. Nobody has to bring things to us. They can submit them through our ticket management system. And it also allowed us to create some workflow opportunities. So students no longer have to, we call it the Jesse Hall shuffle. They come to our administration building behind us, get a form and shuffle off to see their advisor and get a signature and bring it back to us. That has allowed us to have electronic document approval and document workflow, which we didn't have very many opportunities to do. So that's really eased things and reduced the burden on students. It also has given the registrar's office better response times to ticketing because of the technology of having a management system. We've also integrated our residency petition process with our CRM platform. So we use Slate, our admissions office has that, and they let us partner with them to use their CRM platform to have our petition process inside of Slate because of its great communication tools. They have helped us, and we've worked with the communication team to have scheduled reminders and personalized messaging that we never had before when we were doing them in our previous system. So that's been a real improvement for helping students get through the process, understand us better, and have a more timely response as well. And then finally, transfer of division. What that means at our university is when a student wants to move from one academic division, college, to another, say I want to leave engineering and I want to join business, you have a student has to request that, and they have to be admitted and be allowed to move that in their academic home to the new unit. We have an online process for that. It also has workflow. Now this one is unique. We've had it a while. It was built by our partners here on campus by our IT office. So the students have a request form that they and their advisors can use. It goes through workflow. The new advising office sees the request, can choose to yes, no, maybe, we need more information, and then it's routed to the registrar for us to make that transaction in the information system to move the student and get them a new advisor and all that. So we've had great success with that. It's very popular and very trouble-free, and we really depend on it. So it's been great for our partners at IT to provide that for us. Okay. I spoke briefly about improved communication. That's something we've been working on a lot lately. We are fortunate to be part of enrollment management, as my colleagues are, and we have a team of communication professionals that can assist us with our messaging and our all the important things that they do. We have a registrar, and not just registrar, but mostly registrar things on a portal that we have for our campus users. So they make sure that all of our communications, we take things we need to make changes to, we route through the management team of communication to update our portal to make sure our portal and our ticket management system Sharewell and our CRM and Slate and everything, once we make changes, that everything is in similar language, we have the right messages, and everything is in sync. This really helps us communicate better with our families and our students, and by having more timely communications, better communications, it really helps with the overall smooth operation and takes away again those perceived barriers for the students. Okay. The registrar is a retention partner with our campus policy groups. A couple different colors on here, and I did that to emphasize the difference between the ones in navy are our faculty committees, and the gold ones are our staff and administrative committees. we've been fortunate as an institution to have a really good repertoire is not the right word I was going to say, a relationship with our faculty and different administrative units. We've had really great leadership that has made contact with all the different players and gotten us a really nice access to different committees. We have ex officio, or we're partners, or we get to visit, so we can be part of the conversation with faculty council when they're deciding academic policies, or with the undergraduate deans when they're proposing ideas for a modification of our general ed, or maybe a new degree program that they're thinking about at the undergraduate curriculum committee, new classes. So we can provide the registrar insight, and it really provides a more efficient and less confusion. So we're all in the, we can use our expertise in systems, we can use our logistical knowledge. It's like, hey, that would be great to have that course, but we probably need to consider the ownership of who's going to maintain that, and those kind of conversations at the beginning. So we don't have to revisit those after people already have made a decision, or made their kind of set their heart on a particular thing. And then we're like, oh, that's not going to work. We talked to financial aid and that's going to be a problem. We can have all those conversations during the development process, and that's really great. We do the same thing with the Chancellor's Military and Veterans Committee and our IT, Academic Technology and Student Services Committee, staff committees. Same reason. We have expertise to work with all the military benefits. Our Veterans Center actually does report to the University Registrar here. So we work with them all the time. And also work with our IT friends when we're talking about new student systems and things like that, to make sure that we have all of our necessities, and our input during the development process has been a real help. And again, working towards retention, with retention in mind. We want to make sure all the decisions and the things we're developing, we work into that lens. Okay.
Thanks, Victor. I'm going to put up the final slides that you can all grab our emails should you want them. I think we also have about 8 minutes to answer some questions that you all might have. Danielle, I think we should read some of the unanswered questions that are open.
Absolutely, and I think most of these are for you, Victor. So first, are there not dates or timeframes where certain tuition may be refunded per federal guidelines?
Yes. Yes, there are. So as I said, the guidelines, you have institutional policy, you have financial aid, federal policies, all of those things and those conversations have to be vetted, and you want to be part of the conversation with your partners at the beginning, not at the end after somebody's already made a decision. Then you have to backtrack and confuse the students. And they're like, Beth said the same thing, build your partnerships out, make those relationships, attend those meetings, be part of the conversation at the beginning. It makes all the difference.
We've actually at NYU looped our compliance folks into our class withdrawal process when these sorts of questions come into play. So if they're asking to waive W's or remove the withdrawal grade, if you will, on the transcript, or if they're asking to refund in questionable ways, we actually have worked them into our sort of workflow process so that they at least have eyes on it and can weigh in if and when they need to.
Okay. Question, Victor, using Slate, how do you keep staff who do not have a legitimate educational interest from being able to see information about students?
Well, that's not necessarily just Slate. I mean, we obviously have security roles, I said, in all of our information systems to try to restrict information so only the people who need to see the information can see the information. Obviously, we also have FERPA training. We also have for our student workers and we have in all the registrar staff, we have a contract that you said students said that after the training that people sign that, they're only going to access things. So we try to control it with technology, with security roles, and also with training.
Thanks, Victor.
Mm-hmm.
Also, who initiates retroactive withdrawal requests? Do colleges review, approve prior to the committee, or does the committee review all requests? Also, do the revision of records and the reassessment appeals committees meet together?
I'll answer the last part separately. They meet separately. Our revision of records and the assessment committee do not meet together. The revision of records being the faculty, they really don't want their decisions to be based on financial necessity. And I know that's a little pie in the sky, but you know, it's really an academic conversation with that group as opposed to some of the more logistical things, because they know there's another group that's going to consider that, so they can really focus on academic need. Would you repeat the first part, Danielle, again?
Absolutely. Who initiates retroactive withdrawal requests, and do colleges review or approve prior to the committee, or does the committee review all the requests?
The students requested it. At one time, it did go through the academic dean's office of their dean, but they do not have to do that anymore. It goes directly to the faculty committee. It's a student direct to the committee. Obviously, it goes to the registrar office logistically, but we don't filter them.
And a follow-up question: when you grant a reassessment of tuition, is it a refund or a credit waiver on the student's account for a future term?
It's a credit. It is not an actual. It might lead to an actual refund of money if they don't have a balance. You know, if it exceeds the amount that they owe the university, but it is not a direct refund. It is a credit.
All right, thanks, Victor. It looks like we have one for you, Beth. Do you make students petition to withdraw from a single class rather than allowing them to withdraw directly in the student portal?
It depends on what you mean by petition. Class withdrawals can be initiated through our student information system, obviously between the add drop deadline and the withdrawal deadline. So students can initiate it, but it doesn't just go through. It has a stop or two depending on the school and how many layers of approval they require. And if the student doesn't have the ability to ask for a refund or a waiver of the W grade in the system, the goal is that the request initiates a conversation. The conversation with the school administrator or academic advisor might surface the need for appeal for tuition refunds or W grade removals. And they have the ability to process them through the system if they have the proper security roles. Not every school lets a school processor do that. Some schools make it go through the process according to the standard deadlines, and then there's appeal committee within the school after that. And if the school decides appeal is necessary, they'll sort of submit a secondary request for those additional waivers. And that's where I say sometimes we have compliance folks partner with our folks to sort of, make sure it's acceptable. And yeah.
It looks like I have one that a lot of people are asking for our withdrawal questions here at UMSL. And I will state that we kind of borrowed the idea of the withdrawal survey here at UMSL from our partner UMKC, so University of Missouri, Kansas City. So I'm happy to share our questions. I think Kansas City might have theirs posted on the website, but I'll check and I'll see if there's any way that I can link this with the webinar that's recorded. I will note though that with our withdrawal questions here at UMSL, when the student selects one answer, so if they say work studies conflict is a reason for the withdrawal, it then drops down another subset of questions to kind of dig a little bit deeper at why the student is withdrawing. So I'll try to share that information as well in the cleanest format possible. And another question for all of us: do we all have professional advisors or faculty advisors? I will say that we have both here at UMSL.
Both at NYU.
It's the same,
and you can feel the difference.
I agree with Beth completely, and it's both for us as well.
Yeah, I find that professional advising teams tend to know what's going to be denied when it gets to us and the compliance folks, when sometimes faculty advisors might not. And I'm seeing in the chat the question about the size of our teams. The registrar's office, as you see, I have the registrar and enrollment management technology. So the registrar specific team is around 50 individuals in the office of the registrar.
I'll go next, I guess. Our registrar's office, like I said, we have the Veterans Center and we have some communication people, but grand total probably about 22 would be about it.
And we have 14 to 16, including our student workers.
Don't count your student workers, Dan.
I try to inflate that number a little bit, but it looks like we're pretty much at time. So I personally want to say thank you to everybody, and to my panelists here. Thank you both for joining me and for doing this great presentation. And thank you all for joining. And I'll let Beth wrap it up.
Oh, well, I'm just going to say what you just said, which is thank you everybody for coming. I'm really humbled by the number of people who showed up here today and at the annual meeting. So thanks so much for your interest and for attending. And I think ACRO manages the messages after this. And again, if you have any questions or want any details from any of us, all three of us are very open to sending you those details. So reach out. Have a good one, everybody.